Good morning, everyone. We're nearly there at the end of the week. Just before I let my panel introduce themselves, I just want to have a recap of this is a WACL panel, and it's the last one of our week. Now, WACL is a UK female leadership club, which stands for Women in Advertising, Communication and Leadership. And I think we believe at the club that we have a duty as senior female leaders to inspire, support each other and campaign for the right things. And they're our three pillars. We support each other because we believe a stronger me is a stronger we. We inspire the next generation by doing lots of training for the next generation because we also believe that you've got to pay it forward. And then we campaign. And we campaign on making sure that we accelerate gender equality, which is our big mission after all. And over this week, our sessions have been on our 5 levers of change. So on Monday, we talked about promote for potential. On Tuesday, we talked about changing the language of leadership. On Wednesday, we talked about the importance of being a women's health hero. And today, and probably the most important part, I guess, for the world is about the work we do. And our statement is that we should create and work like the world is watching. And the world is watching all the time. And I can't believe that I've got 3 better experts on the panel to talk about how we move that going forward. So I'm just going to ask from left to right to introduce themselves, right to left.
Hi everyone, my name's Carly Avenner. I'm CEO of Leo in the UK, creative agency.
Good afternoon or morning, everyone. I'm Toby Osari. I'm a partner at AAR. We are consultants to the marketing industry.
Hello, I'm Vicky Hanley. I look after all of the advertising at Lloyds Banking Group.
So I think this area goes into 3 parts. We talk about our work a lot, and we know that we should be working with teams that are unbiased, and there's a lot of diversity to create work that reflects society. But I guess the big watchword that's been talked about across the Quasset, across the week is AI and how we use that and how it enhances us. So for me, this falls into 3 big questions. 1, we need to really have the big watch out world, which is the biases, the ethics and the responsibilities around how we use AI and the pitfalls and the advantages. So I'm going to start with that question. There's this big paradox, I think, between the speed and the bias. So, Toby, I'm going to go to you first, which is you've said to fight bias, we must slow down. How can we and agencies and clients balance that demand for everyone wanting it to be cheaper, faster, better, to making sure that we still do great work?
The reason why I think there's context to slowing down, because if you think about representing the world in different niche communities, you really need to understand the world and you need to understand your audiences. And when you think about biases, they're things that kind of just seep into our subconscious without us thinking about it. So for us to be really representative, we do actually have to slow down and think about the different audiences that we're creating for in order for them to move and do something and effectively buy a product or a service. So the challenge with AI and speeding up is that actually you don't slow down to check yourself and think, am I genuinely speaking to the right audiences? Am I reaching the right audiences in the right way, talking to those communities in the right way? And I think by slowing down, you can ask yourself that question, check your biases, and then use the right AI tools that you need to then effectively speed up. But if not, the work isn't going to reach those audiences which you need to reach, and there's power in really understanding various different communities in which you're speaking to. So that's why I think it's essential to slow down before you speed up.
And Vicky, I'd like to go to you with, I know that obviously Lloyds famously have got 26 million connected customers.
Yep.
And you obviously get a lot of data from those customers. What are they telling you about, and certainly from a female point of view, the biases that if we're not careful, we can just sleepwalk into a future world of not representing the future and only the past?
Yeah, so our goal is for every customer to feel represented in everything that we do from a creative perspective. And one of the key challenges we have at Lloyds Banking Group is because of our transformation agenda, AI and tech roles are kind of much more fast-paced than ever before. So we did some research because it's quite interesting that it's like 73% of the UK population in terms of tech and AI leaders are male. And the projected growth is that it's only going to rise from 23% to maybe 27% by 2030. So there's a real challenge that if we don't do something now and we don't start to kind of create the kind of the LMMs, use all the diverse audiences, all the females starting to use the LMMs, then we're not, in 5-10 years' time, all of the output, whether that be creative, media, anything that we are kind of looking at from a population bias perspective is going to be a real challenge. And we're going to be looking back 10, 15 years with just so much work to get to where we are, to really have that strong, reflective representation in everything we do. We really now start having to look at what we're doing right now.
And knowing that from a lawyer's point of view and some of the work you've done, give us some examples of how you've purposely addressed it and what can others learn. You know, if you had some words of wisdom, what would that be about? There's things that you think, oh my God, if we just listen to that data, we will be going down the wrong track.
Yeah. I mean, within every ad that we create, we always try and not force gender bias, so make it feel really natural, really reflective, not like we're ticking a box. It has to feel representative of the UK. But I think what's really important is getting kind of the younger kind of cohorts coming in. So 1 in 5 digital apprentices are going to women. So that's 4 out of 5 of the next generation of talent coming in. And it's about how we educate, how we upskill, how we kind of promote this to kind of the next generation coming through, which if we don't, it's going to change very, very fast.
We talk a lot about, I think there's going to be new jobs that come out of, and this is probably one of the new jobs, almost like a bit of concentration on recruitment. Carly, I'd like to go to you with, you obviously run a great creative agency. I'd love all the work you do. But what do you see are the subtle biases that can creep into creativity that, again, I think that it's just, you know, that one bit, it's only like a slightly different and a slightly different. And then, as Vicky says, you look back and you think, oh, my God, we've moved in the wrong direction. How do you keep your team making sure that they don't let these biases creep in?
Yeah, it's something that we've been thinking about for a long time before AI, and actually it starts with the teams themselves. So making sure you're actually hiring diverse teams that bring different perspectives to shape the work from the outset. And I think to Toby's point, you do have to be really intentional about the right inputs to make sure that the outputs are diverse as well. We've done things over the years like create diverse image banks for our creative teams to use, even just in a creative development phase. So when you're sharing ideas and concepts with clients and you're bringing them to life through imagery, that imagery is diverse from the outset. So when you then get to a final campaign, you're not arguing about casting and making sure there's diversity at that end because you've built it all the way through. And I think the challenge with AI is that if you're using AI as an input, it doesn't have a gender or an ethnicity. It's completely neutral. However, to your point, because the inputs aren't diverse, the output you're going to get isn't going to be. So I think we have to remain as intentional as we can, and we should think about how we're training AI and what imagery and what experience we're putting in there. One of the other things we do, which I think is more important than ever, is we partner with the Diversity Standards Collective. So again, at every single point along the creative development process, all the way through to casting, production, execution, how we support our talent when the work is out there, we are plugged into experts who are ensuring that we are representing our audiences in exactly the right way. And I think we need to do that even more intentionally when we're using AI so much throughout the journey.
I think that point's really interesting about making sure that everything you do just feels really authentic. So pretty much all of our imagery now is AI generated. But actually, when you're reviewing the images, we had a dad and a son, just by kind of feeding those emotional elements through to make it feel real, make it feel authentic, and make it feel relatable, that people kind of feel themselves in that role, is super important. I think AI is half of it, but real people are the other half. And I don't believe you will ever get to a fully AI, because otherwise the cut through is so hard, more than ever when in a fragmented media space. So you've got to kind of do better than ever to stand out, not just in your category, but in the whole competitor set.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, I love Disney, but we really don't want to be in the world of animation, do we? I think there's a really good point here, which is what everyone's saying, which is this cross between AI and human intervention. And being a numbers girl, I would be really good with spend 50% of your time on that and 50% of your time on that, which is more difficult. But giving the audience here some advice, and I think Vicky, I'll come back to you. How do you see the learnings from that? And do we need a different skill set, which was we need people also to help us out, call things out, I guess, that doesn't look quite right, or because when you're in it and when you're, knee deep in work, sometimes it's hard to come back and think about what you've done objectively. So how do you do that at Lloyd's?
So we have a DE&I panel that quite often when we get casting, we actually kind of put it to the panel that are fresh. We did it on a Halifax ad. We had really interesting. It was an Asian family, and the guy was bending down to propose. And we put it into the panel, and the panel were like, that isn't what happens in our culture. So the guy is meant to ask the father of his future wife for her hand in marriage. So we were about to create this incredible ad where it didn't reflect actually what happens in people's cultures today. So anything we do that's kind of significant, or we've got questions, or think actually is this relevant to that audience, we get the panel together, and they can come together in 24 hours, and they give us real, honest, open, and thought-provoking views. And a lot of the time, it does change our creative outputs.
And that's so important, right? Because that's a human panel that you put together. That's nothing that you could put in front of an AI synthetic panel, and that panel wouldn't give you any kind of responses that's useful for that campaign. So it just shows, again, the input of humanity and human insight and human lived experience is critical to creative ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to your point, just by the whole kind of human and AI element, it has to work, because otherwise, can you imagine if we'd gone out on TV with we would have had a huge amount of backlash. But to your point, when you're in it, when you're kind of in the delivery of it, sometimes you just need to take that step back and get other perspectives to go, actually, is this really authentic?
I also think I think AI will give you lots of suggestions, and I think there's going to be more of a need for a skill in leadership and decision making. Because and the biggest decisions also are to say when to say no and when to say yes, when to say go back around to the drawing board. And I think that skill around decision making is something as leaders we're really going to need to hone. Carly, I'd like to come to you, and I was lucky enough to have Charlie on my board at one of my panels earlier, and we were talking about McDonald's and reflecting on McDonald's. And I always say that I still think the creative, a gift that the people have is just in you or it isn't. It's like a comedian knowing a good joke. And there are certain people that have it. And I know Raise Your Eyebrows was that moment, a recent moment for you guys. Can you talk about that and because maybe if you put all those ideas into AI, whether that one would have come out, and how do we make the champions, the people that have that instinct feel like real talent rather than just employees?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of sort of human creative leap, because the idea came from lots and lots of research, talking to people about the role that McDonald's plays in their life, and how they talk about McDonald's. And the creatives just made the observation that, yes, there was a conversation between people about, shall we go to McDonald's? Do you fancy McDonald's? But there was also an eyebrow raise, that look. And I just don't think AI would have spotted that, because it wasn't really what people were saying. It was the facial expression, it was the body language, it was how they were saying it. And I think it sort of takes a human to spot that in another human. And, it really just was that creative leap to then go, oh, a raised eyebrow looks a little bit like a McDonald's logo. And that's kind of where the idea was born. So I agree. We never would have got to that from AI. So I think that's a really good example of how creative judgment, which is either an innate human skill, we can debate that separately, or is something that is crafted and honed and learned over time, will become ever more important because everyone now has the power to create kind of basic creative ideas based on a strategy and a sort of rational step forward. But very few people have the ability to make that big creative leap. And I think that's where the role of agencies come in. And that's where we have to place our value as many of our administrative tasks get automated. That I think it's more important than ever to be able to help brands cut through creativity.
I think
go for it. I love that work, and I was actually at the media agency at the time that supported that work. And what I love about that work, it takes that human insight. And yes, you may have used various different automated tools, and we may have used different automated tools in terms of media, but it allows it to live across channels, so many different channels, also live across so many different audiences. And that's just, like you say, that big creative leap that you couldn't have got from a tool. But yeah, I absolutely love and adore that work.
I think it was amazing, and I think even my kids, that's all they do now. They don't even go, I want a Macca's. They kind of do the eyebrows. And I think that is where you can start to have real fun with what you're doing, because the fun element is what stands out. And I think we have, obviously we've got the Black Horse, and we've done some really interesting stuff with AI. We've got Cara going on social media at the minute, which is like this micro horse that's like galloping around and doing sort of really fun stuff. But that's the stuff that gets picked up. A campaign that went live last week, which was the last time we had £5,000 deposit for first-time buyers, was in 1996. So kind of Ben and his team came up with the idea. The last time, let's shape everything around 96. We've got Ewan McGregor, who is our voiceover, who Trainspotting came out in 96. What about if we put I've Got the Key, the Secret onto the audio ads? Because actually the two of them working together, shell suits in all of the print. And that is kind of what helps stand out. Yes, a lot of it is AI generated, but you can have a real impact if you become part of culture. The Baroness was on her way to the House of Commons on Monday, and she picked up the Metro cover app and then started talking about it, about how amazing that Lloyds was doing this great thing for kind of first-time buyers, and obviously that will then help support the UK economy. So you just got to test and learn and try it and see what happens, really.
But also it comes about, I think, all these things around longevity. Would she do that? Lloyds have got a history of trust being built into their business. So whatever you do will be, and then to having fun, you've got the permission to have fun with that kind of thing around bank loans because you're Lloyds. And I think we mustn't miss where we are on the journey with a brand and a company to understand how we can leverage that kind of trust.
Yeah, definitely. And with over 250 years, the brand has gone from kind of huge impacts, real horses galloping on beaches, to actually now we're on this transformation agenda. We're the biggest UK's digital bank. The Black Horse in its entirety as it was is kind of an emblem of trust, authenticity, part of British life. However, it has to move as we are, it will always be there, but bringing that kind of AI focus to it and making it part and central of people's lives is kind of how you continue to kind of grow the brand and be front of mind in this kind of crazy world that we live in now.
So Toby, I'm just going to ask, so your role now at the AAI, you see a lot of work and how clients and agencies work together. And there is no doubt, their barriers to entry for creativity have dropped. It doesn't mean the quality should, and it doesn't mean that everyone could do it. The famous quote from Sir John Hegarty is, everyone can draw, but only so many people should exhibit. And I think it's a bit the same. What have you seen, and what would be your watch-outs and your learnings from how people are coping with this barriers to entry lowering but keeping standards high?
Such an interesting question, because I think if you think about creativity as a whole in terms of lowering the barriers to entry through the different tools that we've got, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think everybody should access their functionality and their ability to be creatives. I do think that's a good thing. But the quality of the idea and actually the quality of where you take a brand and the quality of where you take a platform and develop that platform, particularly as an agency, is critical. But I'd say even more so beyond that, we can't forget as people who are servicing and working with brands to really understand their business, really understand their business challenges, their goals, their objectives, the people within that organization. What does the whole marketing model look like? And is that set up for success? Is that set up to produce amazing creative work? So I think we need to make sure that we're answering all of those questions and we've got the foundations right, and then we can set off to kind of do great creative work, create great partnerships between brands and agencies as well.
Great. And then finally, we're talking about sort of long-term health, I guess. And I'm a believer in, all things should be cheaper, faster, better, in home and at work. But the one thing I think that sometimes we lose, I'm also a believer that when you drive efficiencies, it should enable growth. And my concern is that we sometimes use a language which is you drive efficiencies to save costs. And as we all know, the danger of that is you save costs once and you quickly cut into muscle if you're not driving top-line growth. So the questions around here are, how do we protect both? And how do we not fall into the unintended consequences? And I know, Vicky, that you've talked a lot about how AI, certainly in some of the outdoor production or radio, how is Lloyd's balancing the two?
I think what it enables us now is to get to market quicker. So, for example, we can react to what's happening in the world around us quicker than we used to. So if you're looking at kind of print shoots, average lead times are about 12 to 16 weeks, and like a 2-day shoot be like 300K. Whereas now you can literally kind of create an image in a day, we approve it, and then we've got this guy called Wes who's in a studio or in a house somewhere who's literally kind of putting the dots in to kind of enhance the quality for kind of posters, press, etc. So I think for us it's speed, it's efficiency, but it's also enabling us as a brand to be at the heart of British culture and society and be able to react quicker than we ever have done before.
Good old Wes.
Good old Wes. Apparently he's a legend at Publicis, so I hear.
So Carly, just thinking about that, and if AI is involved in our production and voiceovers, obviously we talk about WACO, about inspiring the next generation and pay it forward. How do we protect this young generation coming into the workplace? And also, I'm just thinking about voiceovers and some early talent, like a lot of young talent cut their teeth on things like that. How do we make sure that we've not suddenly got this, delta between the people at work and the people who are not?
I mean, I think if we stop hiring people, we won't have a business or an industry in the future. So there's no doubt that you need young talent coming into the business. I think what is changing, I think AI is automating tasks, but not necessarily jobs. So the jobs and the tasks that those young people are doing will just be different. And I think it's exciting, the opportunity for them to be doing way more interesting things. Like when I joined the industry and there was less technology, my job was to do loads of store visits, go and see my clients, spend a day with them. And I think with all the technology we've had in our hands, we've become at a junior level, you're just kind of like an admin person. And that isn't how you get to brilliant creative work, and that isn't how you train people up to be brilliant business partners for their clients. So I think there's now an opportunity to let go of some of the kind of managing of the process and to get back to where our real value lies, which is helping our clients find growth. And I think that's true within an agency itself as well. How can we position these people to be growth drivers and thinking about ideas creatively that can grow our clients' businesses?
And it's critical as well, because in the pitches that we will run as AAR, and it's not the only thing that we do, but a lot of the comments when you come out of those pitch rooms is obviously about the work, but it's also about the talent. So, and it's not just about necessarily the senior talent. Obviously, senior talent is critically important, but also who's the day-to-day that's going to be on my business? Who am I going to trust day to day? Can I see the whites of their eyes? Can I see their talent? And so we've got to nurture that talent, because the brands and the businesses that we're serving require brilliant talent and not just senior talent. So you're absolutely right. We've got to keep recruiting, but also keep training for critical skills, because it's that critical decisioning that we're going to need more and more and more in terms of what we're doing.
It goes back to what you were saying earlier. Like if you've got that creative flair, that's kind of embedded in when you're younger, and your output is only as good as your input. So kind of the learning and the development, the more campaigns you create, the kind of more understanding of the customer and how you want to be seen through a customer lens, and always putting that customer right in the center of it. I think is incredibly powerful. But yeah, your outputs are only as good as your inputs wherever you are within your career.
I think it comes back to decision making as well, doesn't it? So I'm just going to use probably a terrible analogy, but it's like shopping online. We all went from shopping offline to online, but now I think most of us have got a happy medium. There's certain things you'll buy online because it doesn't really matter. You sort of know 7 out of 10 is fine. There's other things you've got to do it in real life. You've got to go and choose. There's some things or something special, and I think actually that's probably what we're going to do in the business. We've probably gone too automated, which people are never taught. Everything's done through some kind of channel, from email to Slack to whatever message board that you've got, to now, but there'll be certain times. And I love the fact that I totally agree. I believe people by people. And if you're, life's too short. You want to work with people you know you can work with, and you know that by just looking at those people.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also about that human touch. So, for example, my father-in-law got defrauded £10,000. Somebody rang him up, and he was absolutely devastated. But he spoke to somebody at Lloyd's, and that human element at Lloyd's, because he felt genuinely embarrassed because he had become a victim of fraud. And it's huge, like the amount of people in the UK that are continually getting defrauded by different digital kind of capabilities, or just people phoning up still, and building that education around. But it's the people at the end of the day that will kind of help and guide you with whatever kind of is thrown at you. So I think, yeah, it's so important.
So I think we're coming to a close now. I think our lever of Work Like the World's Watching has never been more important. I think that there is something around principles don't change, practices do. I think for us now, that as leaders, we have a real responsibility of making sure the practices that implement the principles are the right ones. And there's so many of them that our job has got to be really decisive. Just on that, is there one piece of advice or one last story or anecdote that you want to go, if I knew then what I know now, or we nearly walked in this problem, that you can share with the audience that gives some examples of watch outs for everyone?
I think for me, it's just a reminder that people want to work with people, and it's just thinking differently about the role of technology in our jobs, in our industries, in our careers. The fundamentals haven't changed. We've just got a new tool to work with, and it doesn't have to be binary. It's not either or. It's definitely both. And I think we're all just going on a journey to figure out what that balance is. So for me, it's just about what's the balance between technology and humanity at different points in the process, and never one or the other.
And for me, it's all about making sure that whatever you're doing you are testing it. You're testing it with customers. A story we had when we were in COVID was the guys wrote a beautiful script, horses galloping through countryside, and we'd already gone into production and then we'll just do some research just to test it. Absolutely bombed, because people weren't thinking of idyllic countryside anymore. They weren't thinking of this kind of amazing life that I could live. I'm stuck in this kind of COVID era. We'd already gone into production and we pulled it back. And I think for me, that's why everything that I do, I test it. And as an AI now, we can do it in 24 hours. We can put a load of ads in and get at least a kind of customer view as to whether it's landing or whether it's resonating or not.
I guess it gives you a warning signal.
Massively.
Just a tiny element that we didn't talk about, which I think is really important in all of this, is just the psychological safety that you create in your teams, in your businesses, to be able to create great work like the world is watching, so that you can build a culture where somebody says, that's fantastic because we're doing the right things for all the right people and all the right audiences, or a culture where you say, actually, let's slow down and ask the right questions. Have we got the right framework, the right setup? Are we doing the right thing by the world in terms of what we're trying to achieve? So that's what I would say.
I think that's really important by empowering your team. So every week we put all the work into my team session, and I actually go, right, what does everyone think? Rather than kind of dictating to them, giving them the opportunity to give their own personal view in a really safe space, particularly the younger ones, because Lloyds is a beast of a company. So giving them the opportunity to have a point of view, and kind of giving them the praise and structure to have kind of such an open surrounding that that's how they're going to develop.
And I think finally, because I guess in this world where everything is shared so quickly, and we talked about trust earlier in the week, that it arrives on foot and leaves on a galloping black horse, that it's so important. It's so important, and it's, again, another probably terrible analogy, but it is like doing some maths on a calculator and assuming that is the right answer, rather having an idea what your number should be at the end of it. On that note, it feels like we're in good hands across creativity, clients, and judging media and agencies. As I said, it's the final one for us. We at Wackle will still champion, and we are our biggest critics, I think, which is a good thing, on when we see good work and bad work from a female point of view. So we're still going to champion that lever. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it doesn't get any hotter. And that's how we all get our voices back. Thank you very much.